Welcome back to Philadelphia. Pretty good couple of days for the hockey club, and it started off really interestingly as your team acquires a really highly skilled player, and arguably the highest skilled player in the draft, I guess you and the coaching staff and the scouting staff might argue.
Well, I think a lot of people would argue that, not just our group. You know, we've heard a lot about this young man for a couple of years now, and I go over each year to the Bratislava tournament, the U18s, and then I go back to the World U18s. And so I sort of watch the evolution of these kids, which is very interesting for me. And to watch them get better, and Willie's skill stood out from the very first time you saw him. He uses the ice extremely well. He's a smart hockey player. And ironically, the first time I heard about him, he was 14 years old, because he has a strong association with the University of Notre Dame. And one of the coaches there and one of his sons goes to a Swedish camp, and they go back and forth. So William actually committed to Notre Dame at maybe 15 years old, and was on a college track at that point. Michael and I talked about it last night, and he said he went home as a 15-year-old and was so dominant and so good in the Junior Elite Series that he said, you know, it was just like, you know, we can't wait 3 years to further our career, and they started playing at a higher level right away.
His dad was a decent skater, not a great skater, so I'm not sure whether bloodlines, genetics have anything to do with how Willie has progressed, because he's terrific out there on the ice.
Well, he really is. He uses the ice well. He uses his edges very well. What Michael did so well was protect the puck, and his hockey sense was extraordinary. And Michael was a guy who would turn up inside the blue line, and you couldn't go get him. He was in a confined space, but he protected the puck so well and saw things so well that he didn't have to move to be effective.
Now, Willie, Dave, has got some opportunities here because he can play in the National Hockey League, he can play in the American Hockey League, or he could even play in the CHL. So he's got some real good options, or go back to Sweden. So I think that's a very good fit for this club, because you can place him in a number of places.
Well, it really is. He's got some nice options ahead of him. Very often you're restricted. For instance, a player drafted from the CHL couldn't be an option for the Marlies, and a European player may be obligated to his club team for another year or two, as we see very often. But this young man has a lot of options available, and we will just be patient and exercise them.
You've got 3 kids drafted on the Saturday who are going to be headed to college. 2 next year, 1 beyond that. Why is the NCAA route, as far as a professional hockey team, a good place to go as these young men get bigger, stronger, and ferment, so to speak?
Well, we talk so often about development and how the curves are different for each individual player. And the way the CBA is structured now, the new CBA, you have 4 years with a European player, and you have 4 years with a U.S. college player. And so it's a chance to watch them develop at their own pace rather than a forced pace. You know, and I get the question all the time about the best possible route. There is no one best possible route. There really isn't. It's up to the individual. And you know, we have players that can go down and progress at their own pace, at the proper pace, and when they're ready to come, they come.
Now, only 1 junior player drafted, and from the CHL, from the Western Hockey League, and you know, a Russian player. Obviously, heard a lot of terrific things about him.
Yeah, we really have. He plays with an edge. You know, ironically, we heard a lot about him from another high-profile draft pick, and that was young Jake Vertinen, that got drafted by Vancouver, because he had quite a running battle with him, and actually a couple of scraps with him, and that's when Jake hurt his shoulder. That's who the fight was against. So he had heard the other side of it from one of the other top prospects. But you know, the timing of the list, Bob, the coaches, or the scouts rather, spend so much time on the list. So you would say, you know, you only drafted 1 player that was playing in the Canadian Junior League. That's simply the way the list comes up. You know, if it is essentially 1 pick off, that could have been 6 players. It really could have been. If 1 player gets chosen differently in the top tier, and your list is 1 different going down, then each pick is different, because you work so hard on putting that list together, and they scout from the list. So it's not, you know, you're choosing a player from a specific area. You're choosing the next player on the list that's the best fit for your hockey club.
Next player on the list in the next weeks to come, we're looking forward to. Thanks for this.
My pleasure.